Okay, welcome everyone. This is our third installment of our BIM series. Thanks to everyone that's been on the series with us so far. We've noticed a lot of those registrations registering through for the whole series, and thanks to all the new registrations that are jumping on here as well. We email out the recordings of the previous presentations via the email, I believe. So today we're covering practical tips to getting started with BIM. Again, this is designed towards product manufacturers who are wondering how to, what BIM is, and then now, how to start it. So we've been really happy with the numbers. So, thanks for jumping on, and, we're getting all kinds of different inquiries. So again, I've mentioned this in the previous episodes, we're really glad that it's helping all sorts of people. So yeah, we'll probably run a little bit shorter today. We're also now calling on our experts out of the UK office, and you'll hear from Ryan today, where BIM's very mainstream in the construction and design, all the way through to home builders. So we're at 4 p.m. today, so keeping that palatable to the people in our UK office. So today's agenda, we've got Ryan. We're going to look at Autodesk Revit versus other tools, why Revit is preferred, some operational basics, handy tips and tricks, and again, we will have some time for questions. Also, we'll probably answer sort of 5 or 6 questions at the end. Here is our again, our webinar series. So we're up to number 3. Again, on those emails and then on the site, you should be able to find the recordings of the previous presentations. So if you want to jump onto them, you can do that as well. So you're in for a treat today. We've got Ryan Wigham. Ryan's our lead tech at Bimstore. He leads the team of around 7 techs, I believe. Ryan's worked with Bimstore for many, many years. So it might be the only, I could be wrong, but it might be the only place he's ever worked, and for Spaceworks and Space Architects. So he's very much an expert in, what we do and why we do it. Ryan has led some projects with a whole heap of global product manufacturers and remains a contact for them and creating their content. People like Growe, Kingspan, American Standard, Legrand, Bosch, JCB. He's always there. I always see these projects coming through Monday.com for these people, and Ryan's there heading it up. And yeah, Ryan again helped me a lot to understand a lot of this technology coming into the business, and he's probably created just about every kind of product you can imagine. Ryan was explaining to me the other day some curtain walling systems that populate joins and panels and corner brackets and things as you sort of wrap it around facades. We do a lot of valves for crane, and I wanted to show everyone this. Right when I joined Bimstore, Ryan was helping. I think it's Hedgehog Highway. Put together these Hedgehog Highway. It's like something like a bracket for under the fence, so that's a safe passage of hedgehogs here and there. So I'll hand over to Ryan, who's now going to present. Thanks.
Morning there. Thanks for that introduction, Tyrone. I'm not sure about being in for a treat, but we'll do our best. So thanks for joining us. I'm Ryan Wigham. Tyrone mentioned there sort of a bit of history on me. Goes back a bit further than that. I'm a bit older than I look. Served my time as a plater welder actually on the banks of the River Tyne in the northeast of England. That industry was sort of dying a death when I was a a young man and switched over into architecture around about 2001. Very different environment, but managed to bring through an ethic of always keeping that site in mind. When I move into a design office, but keeping a focused mind on people on site having to get these things built. 23 years in the construction industry, 18 I've been coming at Space Group, where I was an associate architectural technologist, and my role at the minute is heading up the Bimstore team as associate director. Any issues with my accent? I'm told I've got a heavily northeastern accent. Just give me let me know, and I'll try and posh it up a bit for you. Taiwan's already ran through that agenda, so it's just going to be taking a look through getting started with BIM and its relationship with construction projects, as well as some practical tips on Revit in particular, due to that being my sort of perfect personal experience. Why we prefer Revit, that's as in us, not a statement, because it isn't for everybody. We're going to be focusing on the very early stages of BIM, so getting started, so nice and easy going, very much with new users in mind. So if you're more advanced on your BIM journey, you're probably not going to take too much from this. So the particular focus I'm going to run through is the modeling and drafting side of projects, our software packages. There's obviously a whole bunch of different ones what we'll touch on, but they're all primarily focused on using BIM as a process. As I mentioned, everything I'm speaking around today is tailored around my own experience as an architectural technologist. Just to start with, I'm going to give you a brief history of space architecture's own BIM journey, which was touched on in more detail by Rob Charlton in the episode 1 of this series. So if you haven't seen that, go and check it out. Around about 2009 is where we sort of heavily switched to being a BIM only practice, where all of our output was to be digital. And I think to understand why that was important to us, the first step was understanding what BIM is. It's always remember BIM is a process, so don't get bogged down with buzzwords or acronyms. It's not a piece of software. We used to always get asked is for example Revit BIM, and Revit operates within a BIM environment, so it's a design tool for BIM solutions, and along with a whole heap of other ones. I'm always referring to BIM in an architectural and construction sense. The UK government defines BIM as the quote there, so a collaborative way of working underpinning by digital technologies which unlock more efficient methods of designing, creating and maintaining our assets, embedding key product and asset data in a 3D computer model that can be used for effective management of information through a whole project lifestyle. I think that pretty much sums it up in a good way. There's a more in-depth set of standards and definitions that you can find in an ISO suite of documents. Adam previously mentioned that in the previous episode, and there's an upcoming episode that will delve into that in a bit more detail. From a project-based point of view, some of the core benefits of using BIM that we were looking for as a company is greater visibility, better decision making, collaboration between the design teams, using workflows that allowed us to streamline data and the life cycle of a building, reducing waste, saving time, cost savings. The UK BIM framework have a pretty good infographic you can see up there that just shows BIM as a process. That that design flow there was formed the nucleus of a ISO 19650, which came from a previous iteration of the PAS 11 92 standards, and that graphic shows it well. As an architectural company, we can play an important role in those stages as opposed to just designing a building at the very start. That BIM project is from inception, procurement, construction, and right through the life cycle of that building, facilities management. So Autodesk Revit versus other platform tools. So my experience is with Revit, so that's my starting point. I don't want to be biased, and I don't want to be a sales pitch for excuse me, for any particular type of software. But I think it's important as a company to define what you need as a business, what your deliverables are, and how you best feel you can achieve them while gaining value for yourselves as a company and your clients. Whatever software you do go for, they're all going to do similar things. So it really is whatever works best for you. How a software package operates massively depends on the users, your workforce, and their skill sets, as well as the hardware you as a company or are supplied to those staff. So education is a key factor in it all. A quick Google search brought up the following 10 alternatives to Revit. Now that was the first 10. It didn't mention if it was in any order, but pretty mixed bag on that particular search, because a lot of these, there's obviously some of the obvious ones in there, but some of them also aren't drafting tools as such. They're more software processes. The one thing it had at the top there was SketchUp. So SketchUp, although it's a great tool, it's not something that we would be using as part of our BIM process. So there's many software packages across the world. Some of the main players, Bentley, Vectorworks, Rhino, but the two I've had the most involvement with, or certainly come across anyway, as being the most well known, certainly in the USA and Europe, is Autodesk Revit and Graphisoft ArchiCAD. I mean, as previously said, it's very much personal preference. There's so many factors playing a part. ArchiCAD is actually the older bit of software, so that was established in 1982. So it's had that longevity and experience. Lots of time for it to be tweaked and perfected. Revit was purchased and formally released by Autodesk in 2002. So both of the packages do very similar things. They both enable the creation of a digital model, and that's going to integrate all your information elements included in your design. Views, plans, sections are all created automatically and can be upgraded every time you change that model. So there's some key similarities between them all. I've been told that ArchiCAD is a bit more user-friendly and easier to learn than Revit, so a bit earlier to pick up, but Revit has a more functional parametric design features. Why is Revit preferred? So again, this is why we prefer it. It's not a statement. It's not a fact. You speak to other people, they'll prefer ArchiCAD or another software. I guess it's what you know. And again, I'm going off personal experiences, but I think first of all, familiarity played a big role in it. So it looked like what we were used to using. So obviously, Autodesk AutoCAD was the product we were using. Now, that familiarity sort of played a key role in our choice. The user interfaces were also similar, and that helped with our transition to BIM from AutoCAD, although they all operated pretty different. We felt Autodesk as a company would be a reliable software company that would invest taking their product forward in the same sort of ways that we were wanting to go as a company. Lots of easy, swift and simple conceptual design tools, which was handy for setting up initial designs. The model capability allows us to create high quality construction documents and imagery. Speed and ease of making changes. Quite funny thinking of that now, because at the time it didn't sort of feel like that. But software reliability and stability, you pretty much have that with Autodesk most of the time. The range of modeling tools, just allowed us to create geometry, drawings, data specification, schedule in particular. Those 3D presentations, given clear, accurate displays, and that's come on heaps and bounds over the years. The coordination and clash identification, that's much improved our design processes. We can run clash detection reports or view that model in a 3D sense, as opposed to having to print off all our 2D plans and mark them up with a red pen. And then, of course, the object facilities being able to include products as families that it's going to easily update and swap as that design progresses. So, Rob mentioned it in a previous webcast, but that's speed of starting a project to a plan application being issued is pretty frightening. Some of the things we can get done now in a short space of time, but investing in that technology and looking for value and using a 3D model. As an old timer going from CAD to Revit, there was kind of a resistance to change, especially since it looked so similar but operated so different. But spend a bit of time early on learning that software. There's tons of tutorials on Revit in particular, which I think is another advantage of it, where anything you're trying to do, you'll be able to find a tutorial on it pretty much. And it's just education, spend that time early on learning that software, you reap the benefits further down the line. Just as part of Bimstore, we maintain and manage private portals for different organizations, whether it's contractors or other architects, etc. We have one such tier 1 contractor who has their portal, and it's set up so their design team come onto the portal to grab the objects to make their models. Now, as their architectural partners working with them, they have 4 associated with them. Sorry, 5 architectural partners. 4 of them use Revit, 1 of them uses AutoCAD. So I'm not sure if that's indicative of a global market, but it's my experience. At Bimstore, it's almost exclusively Revit that we get asked for, either directly from a specifier or by way of a manufacturer requesting us to make some stuff for them because they've been asked for it. That's pretty much an overview of why we picked Revit to begin with. The operational basics. So again, very early days. You have a whole raft of tools that's going to be handy for creating your model. So whether that be drafting and getting the skeleton of the design built up, you have different design teams. So your structure might have their own structural model. Your MEP guys, they'll have their own model, and that model it can be all federated into one architectural plan, which was another good feature of the Revit software. Sections and detail, and really important from getting a project created. What Revit does, it allows us to put a section in, pull that onto a sheet, take the call outs, and start detailing up. The drawing sheets work really well as well. The BIM families we'll come on to shortly. Several ways of using them, but in the main, you have system and loadable families, so two different types. 3D views, really handy from a design stage for walking through that model, seeing what's if anything's been missed, if there's any clashes, demonstrating it to clients, etc. It obviously renders and walkthroughs. So the image that you're looking at there is something that, as an architectural practice, by using BIM, we can create this from scratch and get stuff issued, in 4 weeks. And that's including an early stage contractor proposal drawings, a detailed spec, which can include manufacturer products. And it's not just pretty pictures, these are detailed set of drawings. Very handy tool. We always now include walkthroughs. In the early days, we were using the built-in Revit walkthrough tool, whereas now you have visualization plugins where you can walk through your project, and that's why it's important to have your BIM project modeled correctly. And I know a lot of our architects like to populate them with the furniture that's going in there, or whatever that objects that you can see. And this is great for showing clients, has a big impact when they can see that project and start moving things around, changing things. Handy for the design team when they're reviewing or specifying products, as well as things like demonstrating to local authorities, so plan purposes, building control. So what you're looking at there is a plan view in a completely empty Revit project. So you're essentially going from a blank canvas to creating a BIM project, and it's a very slick and easy process once you get the hang of it. There's a whole range of tools that you can work with within the Revit environment, and you can see a few of them on those toolbars. And what Revit will do is it'll come with predetermined types, and you can adjust them to suit your needs depending on what you do. If change that floor build up or a wall cavity size, whatever it is. Your toolbars will look different between the two environments. So you have the project, which I've just shown there, that's like a .rvt, and then a loadable family, which is separate to the actual project that you load in. The very basic principles of getting started on a Revit model, so beginning that process of those images we showed there, following your conceptual design, are going to involve something like system families. So they're objects that are built into the projects themselves. So you don't load them in; they're already there, and you just adjust them to suit your needs. So things like floor, so you can draw that floor in using the drafting tools. Same as walls, roofs, as well as curtain walls and stairs. So that makes up the body of your system families. There's model in place families too, which means you can model within that project environment, but we tend to avoid doing that and use loadable families where we can. And this starts to build up that digital model. From there, you start using your loadable families. So this is where product families come into the equation. the meat on the bones of that model in your specification. So all the while you're doing that, any changes such as altering a window size, they're automatically reflected on all of your views, plans, elevations, and schedules, which was an absolute game changer from us moving from a 2D CAD environment where you would have 2D plans, your window schedules will be Excel, ironmongery schedules again set with Excel. It's all doing it in one. Obviously, this is why I'm a technician, not an architect, but that's the little model there, and you're going from that to a fully functioning BIM model like that pretty simply, and that's populated where you can put your room layouts with the furniture on there, set your solar panels, and end up with a really useful BIM model. Some of those core features are allowing for sections and detail callouts, and they're all linked to. They can all be linked to the spec. Again, any changes automatically reflected across a whole raft of drawings. Drawing sheets easily to set up, and any changes are reflected. You're basically just adding a revision to the drawing. At least that's what we're told. But you can see a good toilet set up there, full of content in the bulk of that design setup. Any changes to that are automatically going to reflect in all those drawings, any 3D views, and any walkthroughs. Handy hint, tips and tricks. I think the first thing you need to think about if you're creating Revit families to go into your project is that template. What template are you going to use? There's a whole heap that come out the box as that starting point, and that's going to be determined by what it is you're creating. So are you making a window or a door, as they're going to be hosted into a wall? So in that sense, you can use a window or a door template, build your family into there. Are you going to create an object that you want to be face-based? So do you want if you're creating a boiler, do you want it to attach to a wall? There's wall-based objects or ceiling-based objects. We tend to avoid using them just because early on it would cause issues with the MEP model, where it wouldn't recognize a wall-based family as part of as a separate object which created as a wall. So we started using either generic or face-based, and again, it's personal preference. If you're attaching something to a wall, a face-based, it allows you. It doesn't have to be a wall. You can attach it to, whatever's in that project and set it to your right height. If you move it, it'll go with it. And a generic one, it's a bit easier to place. You can just go into plan view, place it. If you build in sort of parameters into it, you can change its height. I use the default levels. The level of definition do you want? So looking to keep in line with the level of development. So we aim for an LOD of 100 to 350. Anything above LOD 400 is you're getting into fabrication level. It does depend on the product. So something like a cubicle or a cubicle door that could be used, for fabrication raft of drones. In fact, it is. But also keeping in mind the Revit levels of detail, so that coarse, medium, and fine, and you can build them in yourself. Any features you want in, so things that are going to be useful for you to put into a model, like clearance zones on a boiler or a heat pump, selectable handle types, things that will change the look of the object, and also that schedule. Do you want material textures on there? Just make sure that the object is useful. Don't get sucked into over modeling it. There's some really useful sections on this on the Bimstore Bible that's available on our website. So on those templates, you can see there, generic's a good starting point. Maybe little less flexible once it's in that project. If you're wanting to quickly move things about, and not letting you put it where it wants to go, face-based will allow you to automatically attach to any surface or wherever you want that to go. Don't forget to update the family category when you're in there. So if you're making a thermostat and you just use face-based in the family category, you can change that to an electrical fixture or whatever category that product wants to be. Always try to keep the geometry simple, minimize that complexity. You want it to look like the project, the product. You need it to be an architectural representation of that product. That's what a term we use. To do that by using a combination of extrusions, revolves, sweeps, and voids, and have them all working together to create your geometry. Use reference lines and dimensions. These are the things that are easy wins. Don't forget to put useful metadata into that object. We have a standard set of shared parameters that can go into objects, so it'll be streamlined across a whole range. Obviously, if you're creating them yourself, just put in some useful data. Try to include those Kobe parameters in there. If you're starting with a DWG or a SAT file, or if you're modeling based, tracing over some CAD, make sure you purge that out at the end. Delete any reference to it. Purge it out. Try to create in native Revit wherever you can. Important data in the family can cause performance issues once it's in a project, so we don't like to have anything else in those Revit families other than the geometry from the family, and if needed, nested families, basically other Revit families loaded into there. Formulas and parameters really help with your objects. So lock your geometry to reference planes, use those parameters, and test it. Flex those objects at every step, every time you change something. Load it into a project. Always check what it looks like in plan, elevation. You want that family to look right in different views once it's loaded into a project. For system families, use texture images for flooring and brick types, because it's going to make your model look correct in your projects. You can see an example there of like a floor finish. So when you set that to render, because we've attached that product's floor material to it, the texture image, it's going to look correct. You can also put a hatch pattern on that. So if it's square, or if it's if it's a brick, you can plan out setting out in plans. You can see that's a good example of a view from one of our live projects. Being Bimstored with a bit of branding on there, but it just demonstrates the power of coordinated BIM projects and populated with good quality families. It allows people, whether it's a client or the design team, just to see in real time what it is they're trying to build. That's on the website. If you go onto Bimstore, you can have a walk through that. And so there's some of the some examples of LODs. We've got a thermostat there, on a close up, on a fine view. You can have a little bit more detail if one of your renders is wanting to look good. On the other side of it, when you go to course, just a block, so it's just placed. A few good examples of that on that image. That thermostat, really handy for room elevations. If you're planning every product that's going in there, you can place it, set it out. Good to go. Looks great on your renders. Some of the useful tools that you can add. I mean, there's all sorts you can do. Like just for example, these scissor lifts here, put them in a drawing, you can adjust that height, and that'll be from a Bimstore point of view, that's in line with the actual product. So if we change it to a particular height, what I need it to go to, if I go above or below a minimum or maximum, I get a warning. And we do that by using a combination of like nested families, parametric instance parameters, and formulas. So it's always a good idea to have a good practice at flexing those models, working out parameters, formulas. Some of them are easy, some are a bit complicated, but again, try to always keep things simple. A yes/no parameter in there, for example, you can see that pink box on the top. In a project, that's the safe working height of the basket is an instance parameter. So using visibility parameters and a yes/no formula and materials, a user can put that in, select the height it needs to go, and it show that safe working height. So it can go into a model for putting on the maintenance access strategy drawings. You can see a good example of that, a BIM family in action, and this kind of is the point of BIM files. An architect downloaded a product for their access and maintenance strategy drawings, added it in there, so it's doing what it needs to do from a design point of view, and then you can actually see that picture there. It a site image, which turned into that, which is all down to the BIM file. So that's about it. I mean, when we started using Revit, it was for major projects, the big side of things. It's used right the way through all areas now. So you can see a house created there, packed full of loadable families and manufacturer specific products. So hope I've not took up too much of your time now, but I guess if there's any questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. Everyone can see me there? Okay, not too many questions today, so that's good. So we've got a couple, but I'll get rid of a couple quickly. Do we resell Revit? No, we don't. And yeah, you can contact Autodesk, or there's some resellers like CAD Pro and things like that. So someone's asked, you mentioned home builders. Is it worthwhile home builders getting to this level of detail in Revit? What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We work with a whole bunch of house builders, so what their intentions are is to streamline that process. Whether that's a traditional house builder who's has a run of house types, creating plots of land, or if it's a off-site fabricator where their houses are all created in a factory somewhere, it's allowing them to schedule and collate all that manufacturer data from one model. So it's definitely worth doing it, because a lot of them are.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So another similar question here. So if you create a BIM model in Revit, will it give you the bill of quantities for the whole project?
Yeah, you can schedule that out as long as that's set up. As long as that's set up correctly as you go. Yeah, you can create schedules. Scheduling's fantastic, but there's also material scheduling. So that'll allow you to create bill of quantities. There's plugins as well that'll work with Revit to create that sort of thing for you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I'm not too familiar with that. So it'll obviously give you your window and door schedule, your material schedules. I've seen that. But yeah, there would be add-ins for things like, say, if you wanted to work out your entire internal lining, meter squared or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's doing it. Revit will do it by default. You have to sort of you have to use some of the tools built in, but it has that capability.
Okay.
And that's
good.
Whether it's project based or your family's loaded in.
Yeah. Okay. So someone's asked, what kind of data does Revit capture that ArchiCAD doesn't? I think you mentioned something about the metadata, a couple of points.
Yes. So both very similar. So on a Revit file, so a Revit project, it'll have all that data in. A Revit object that you're loading in, you have by default, there's a small selection of parameters in those families. You can add your own, and update those fields as you can. You can do the same thing in AutoCAD, ArchiCAD.
Yep. Okay. Another one here. So we make compressors that all come in the same box. How do we distinguish the volume ratings in the BIMs, in the BIM objects?
So
sounds like a supplier.
Yeah. So if they're referring to it as being a Revit family, you can. There's a few ways of doing it, but in terms of a mechanical piece of equipment, you can have connectors attached to it. So on those connectors, whether they're a pipe or a duct or electrical, you can put that information into them. In terms of a product, if they're talking about an SKU, you could split that up between instances and types. So product A might come in 5 different outputs. You can build that as one family, and then using the types, you can have that one product with the 5 different outputs in it.
Okay. Yeah, and you build that as a family. Okay.
Yeah.
One last question from me. All those photos in your presentation, were they out of Revit, or were they out of Enscape or something like that?
It's all those images off the top of my head. I think all of them were from our internal project. So Revit will certainly be able to do that. I can't say 100% whether they weren't tweaked via a plugin like Enscape, because we have a visualization department. But me as a technician, we would, if I wanted a view back in the day, I would have my view set up and it would go off to a company and it would take weeks. We then got to a stage where I could do it with press of a button, but it would take a while to process and power. We're now at the stage where even me as a lowly builder with a computer, I can produce images like that. Although I think that's doing a bit of a disservice to our imagery team. But essentially, yeah, those views are coming directly from Revit.
Yeah. Okay. One last question has just come in, and you've covered this a bit, but it's just, again, why is Revit preferred over ArchiCAD?
Well,
a minute on that, whatever we spoke about.
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult question for me to answer, because Revit's the software that we use. That's what we're used to using. Somebody in my situation who's using ArchiCAD would probably say ArchiCAD. So it's completely like personal preference. And then the reasons I mentioned before, if it's a business looking to choose, you just have to sort of weigh up what it is you're wanting to achieve. What value do you think you'll get from using? They're the 2 big ones really that we come across. And make your choice.
And yeah, I know we've had chats before about, we've talked about Revit is much preferred by engineers, because a lot of the data and technical details can be a lot more broadened, and then yeah, ArchiCAD sometimes can be a little bit prettier or something, but it's more of just, you know, just design.
Yeah, but again, it, you know, it really is personal preference.
Yeah, but we can create files in CAD and Revit, so in a way, you know, people can we can create things however people like. Okay. Well, thanks, Ryan. I'll just bring up. I'll just bring up our web, the rest of our series, just as a reminder. Yeah, yeah, here we go. That's the rest of our series. So when's our next one? May 8th, and we're going to lifting the lid on ISO 19650. Paul and I in the office have been doing a course on that, so we should be able to give you some good information on that. But there's plenty of professionals within Space Architects who will be able to give us some good info there. So thanks for jumping on, and have a great day.